The initial realization that someone has truly lost you rarely arrives as a dramatic epiphany. Instead, it dawns slowly, like a fog lifting to reveal a landscape that has irrevocably changed. The first signs are subtle, almost imperceptible to an outside observer, but they form a distinct pattern known as the breadcrumb. This is the phase where a woman begins to test the emotional waters, not with a splash, but with a series of carefully calculated ripples. You might notice a sudden like on an Instagram post from months ago, a follow after a period of radio silence, or a casual comment on a story that feels just a little too deliberate to be random. The most common, and often the most anxiety-inducing, is the seemingly innocent text message. "Hey, saw something that reminded me of you," or the classic, "How have you been?" This behavior is far from arbitrary. It is a deeply intentional act of emotional reconnaissance. After a breakup, especially one where she may have initiated the separation or seemed distant, there is an assumption of control, a quiet belief that you remain a constant, an option in the background. Your silence, your absence, and most importantly, your apparent progress without her begins to erode that assumption. The breadcrumbs are her first attempt to regain her bearings. By sending a low-stakes signal, she is asking a fundamental question without having to voice it. Am I still on your map? It's a safe strategy. If you respond with enthusiasm, she gains reassurance. If you respond coolly or not at all, she can tell herself it was just a casual, meaningless gesture, thus protecting her ego from outright rejection. The psychology behind this is a blend of curiosity and what can be termed nostalgia testing. She isn't yet ready to confront the full weight of her potential regret. Instead, she dips a toe into the past by engaging with a shared memory or a neutral topic. As Lisa, who shared her experience, noted, "I didn't want to seem desperate, so I just liked one of his posts and hoped he'd notice." This action required minimal effort but carried the maximum potential for a signal. It's a way of saying, "I am thinking about you," while maintaining full deniability. The content of the breadcrumb is often a clue. A like on a happy memory suggests nostalgia for the past. A comment on a new achievement might indicate curiosity about your present life without her. A question about a mutual friend could be a probe to see if you're dating someone new. When you find yourself on the receiving end of this trail, the most powerful response is often quiet observation. This is not a time to rush to conclusions or to respond with overwhelming emotion. The critical task is to discern the intent behind the gesture. Is it genuine, driven by a sincere reflection and change of heart? Or is it born from a place of loneliness, boredom, or a simple reaction to seeing you move on? Often, in these early stages, the actions are more about her internal journey than they are about you. She is testing her own feelings as much as she is testing your availability. By not immediately pouncing on the breadcrumb, you allow the silence to do its work. You give her the space to sit with her feelings, and you give yourself the clarity to see if this is a pattern or a passing whim. This period of observation is your first act of empowerment, setting the stage for how you will navigate the more direct tests that may follow. If the breadcrumb trail is the initial, hesitant probe, then the phase of testing the waters is the first deliberate step into the emotional unknown. This is where the interaction shifts from passive observation alike, or a follow to active, albeit cautious, communication. The hallmark of this stage is its calculated safety. The messages are designed to be platonic, almost trivial, creating a wide buffer against the sting of potential rejection. You won't receive a heartfelt, "I miss you," or a confessional, "I made a mistake," instead. The communication is cloaked in the mundane. "How's work going?" Or "I saw that movie we talked about, it was pretty good." Or the classic, "Hope you're doing well." This dance of emotional risk aversion is a fundamental self-protection mechanism. Drawing from the principles of human interaction explored by thinkers like Dale Carnegie, people are inherently cautious about exposing their vulnerabilities. To put one's true feelings on the line is to risk a direct blow to one's self-esteem. By initiating contact with a safe, low-stakes topic, she creates a scenario where she can gauge your receptiveness without having her entire emotional state hang in the balance. The subtext of the housework. Message is not really about your career. It's a carefully crafted key, testing to see if the lock on your attention will turn. Is there warmth in your reply? Is there an openness to continue the conversation? Your response, or lack thereof, provides the first real data on whether the landscape has changed since the breakup. This stage is a critical juncture for you. It demands a high level of self-awareness. The sudden reappearance, however casual, can trigger a flood of old emotions, hope, confusion, or even resentment. Before reacting, it is essential to pause and consult your own intentions. Are you genuinely open to the possibility of reconnection? Provided it comes with changed circumstances and honest communication. Or are you seeking the temporary validation of her attention? A balm for old wounds? Your response must be a mirror of your true position, not a reaction to her tactic. If you are open, the strategy is to engage with polite, light honesty, acknowledging the message without overwhelming it with intensity. This meeting her halfway encourages a more sincere dialogue to develop organically. Conversely, if you have moved on or recognize that rekindling the relationship would be unhealthy, the most respectful course of action is to be gently definitive. Ambiguity is a kind of cruelty in this situation. A vague or overly friendly response to someone testing the waters can be misinterpreted as reciprocal interest, leading to further pain. A firm but polite closure, such as, "I appreciate you reaching out. I'm in a different place now, and think it's best we continue moving forward separately," honors your growth and her dignity. It closes the door on false hope. The testing the waters phase, therefore, is not just about her gathering courage. It is equally about you demonstrating the clarity and boundaries you've built in her absence. How you handle this delicate dance sets the tone for everything that follows, establishing whether this is the prelude to a meaningful conversation or the final quiet note of your story together, the pivotal moment. The true catalyst for the preceding breadcrumbs and cautious tests is the profound and often unsettling silence of your absence. This is where the fundamental shift occurs, moving her from a place of casual curiosity to one of genuine introspection and frequently fear. The initial period after a separation is often managed with a psychological cushion, the assumption that you remain a constant, a fallback option whose presence, even if distant, provides a subtle form of security. This is that they'll always be there, narrative that allows a person to navigate a breakup without immediately confronting its full finality. But this narrative is fragile. It shatters not with a bang, but with the cumulative weight of your silence, your indifference, and most powerfully, your visible progress without her. This is when absence ceases to be a passive state and becomes an active force. What we can call emotional gravity. The void you leave behind stops being an empty space and begins to exert a pull, forcing a clarity that was impossible amidst the noise and emotions of the relationship's end. She begins to see the relationship not through the lens of its problems or her reasons for leaving, but through the stark reality of its permanent loss. The small daily reminders of your shared life, a song, a place, an inside joke no longer evoke a sense of comfortable nostalgia, but instead highlight a palpable absence. The mind begins to perform a subconscious calculus, weighing the frustrations that led to the breakup against the permanent loss of the companionship, intimacy, and future that once existed. It is in this vacuum that the critical questions emerge with unnerving force. Did I make a mistake? Was what I had more valuable than I realized? Did I take him for granted? This emotional pivot is driven by a well-documented psychological principle known as loss aversion. In essence, human beings are wired to feel the pain of loss more acutely than we feel the pleasure of an equivalent gain. The fear of losing something we once possessed, even if we undervalued it at the time, can trigger a more powerful and sometimes irrational response than the desire to acquire something new. When she sees tangible proof that you are not just moving on, but potentially thriving through social media, mutual friends, or simply your lack of response, the theoretical loss becomes a concrete reality. The fear is no longer abstract. It is the fear of having irretrievably lost something of value. This fear can override earlier convictions, leading to the impulsive actions seen in the testing phase. As the drive to avoid the permanence of the loss overwhelms the initial reasons for the separation, your role during this period is to remain steadfast in the growth you have undertaken. This is not a game of manipulation, but a natural consequence of personal evolution. If you have used the time of absence to rebuild your confidence, pursue your goals, and cultivate independence, that very progress is what creates the clarity for her. To suddenly revert to old patterns of availability, the journey of realization and reconnection is not a one-way street leading inevitably back to the past. It arrives at a critical crossroads, a point of decision where the past and the future hang in the balance. This is the moment of potential reconnection, and it is fraught with both hope and risk. The crucial understanding here is that not all realizations of loss are created equal, and not every outstretched hand should be taken. The viability of a second chance hinges entirely on the original fracture, not on the intensity of the current loneliness or regret. A reconnection born solely from the pain of absence is like building a house on a foundation of sand. The first storm will wash it away. But a reconnection founded on a fundamental shift in circumstance or understanding can sometimes create a structure stronger than the first. The scenarios where reconnection holds genuine promise are typically those where the initial breakup was not a result of a deep, character-level incompatibility or a profound betrayal of trust. Instead, they often stem from what can be termed external pressures or correctable misalignments. Consider the couple who parted ways not for a lack of love, but because of overwhelming external stressors, conflicting work schedules that led to constant absence, family pressures that created division, or personal struggles like depression or grief that made one partner unable to fully participate in the relationship. In these cases, the bond itself wasn't necessarily broken. It was buried under circumstances that felt insurmountable at the time. The passage of months can provide the necessary perspective and space for those circumstances to change. A job may shift, grief may begin to heal, or a new maturity may allow both individuals to see that the problem was the situation, not the person they were with. Another fertile ground for a healthy reconnection is the resolution of a critical miscommunication or misunderstanding that acted as a single point of failure. This is not about minor squabbles, but a foundational misinterpretation that poisoned the well. Perhaps one person heard a comment as a final rejection when it was meant as a desperate plea for connection. Maybe an assumption was made about the other's feelings or intentions without a courageous, honest conversation to verify it. If, during the time apart, that specific misunderstanding comes to light and can be cleared away with truthful, vulnerable communication, it can feel like unlocking a door that was mistakenly thought to be permanently sealed. The story of the couple who reconnected at a party months later and discovered their entire breakup was based on a series of assumptions rather than facts is a perfect example. The honesty they found in absence allowed them to see that the core of their connection was still intact, waiting to be rediscovered under the rubble of poor communication. However, this is the point where rigorous self-honesty is paramount. You must act as an archaeologist of your own past, carefully brushing away the sediment of nostalgia and loneliness to examine the true bones of the relationship. The central question to ask is not, do I miss her? But what was the root cause of the breakup? If the causes were superficial or situational, bad timing, external stress, a misunderstanding, then a second chance, approached with new tools and clearer boundaries, might be a risk worth taking. But if the causes were intrinsic, fundamental mismatch in values, life goals, or a pattern of disrespect, dishonesty, or emotional unavailability, then reconnection is almost always a regression. Going back to a relationship with a broken foundation doesn't repair the cracks. It simply teaches you to walk more carefully over them until you fall through again. The strength you've gained in the interim is real, and it deserves to be invested in a future that aligns with your evolution. It's not spent on trying to correct the immutable past. This crossroads is not about her sincerity in this moment. It is about the structural integrity of what you would be choosing to rebuild. The final chapter in this journey does not belong to her. nor is it dictated by her regret or her attempts to reconnect. It belongs exclusively to you. All the preceding stages, the breadcrumbs, the tested waters, the clarity born from absence converge at this single point, a moment of profound personal agency. The message arrives, simple on its surface, but weighted with the history you share. I've been thinking about you in that moment. You are standing at a personal crossroads, and the path you choose will define not your past, but your future. The seductive pull of familiarity will be strong, whispering of comfort and known quantities. But the true choice is not a reaction to her. It is a declaration of your own values, your growth, the life you have begun to build for yourself in the silence. To visualize this, imagine yourself standing before a bridge. This bridge represents the connection she is now seeking to reestablish. It looks familiar, even comforting, because it leads back to a landscape you know intimately. But crossing it means consciously choosing to leave behind the new shore. You are currently standing on the person you have become, the peace you may have found, the hard-won independence. The critical question is not whether the bridge is passable, but whether the destination on the other side is truly where you want to be. Retracing your steps might feel safe, but it often means walking back into the same environment that led to the initial heartache. The patterns, the dynamics, the unresolved issues, they likely still exist, waiting beneath a thin veneer of nostalgia. Choosing to move forward, however, means turning your back on that familiar bridge and venturing into the unknown territory of your own future. Trusting in the strength and self-knowledge you've cultivated, this decision must be rooted in a clear-eyed assessment of your own worth and the architecture of the past relationship. Relationships that fail fundamentally do so because their foundation built on compatibility. Mutual respect and shared values was not strong enough to withstand the pressures of life. You cannot build a stable future on a cracked foundation, no matter how much you wish to repaint the walls. Going back often doesn't lead to repair. It leads to a cycle of repetition, where old wounds are reopened because the core reasons for the rupture were never truly resolved, only temporarily forgotten in the flurry of reconnection. Your evolution during the time apart is not a tool to be used to fix something that was inherently broken. It is the seed of a new life, and it deserves to be planted in fertile ground. Therefore, when you pause to reflect, the most important voice to listen to is your own. Honor the journey you have undertaken. The person you were when that relationship ended is not the person you are now. You have learned the contours of your own heart better. You understand your needs more clearly. And you have proven to yourself that you can stand on your own. To sacrifice that hard-earned ground for the sake of familiarity is to betray your own progress. The most powerful and respectful choice you can make for both parties is a decision born of clarity, not confusion, of strength, not fear. Whether that decision is to cautiously explore a renewed connection with firm boundaries, or to respectfully decline and continue your journey forward. It must be made with the unwavering conviction that your primary commitment is to your own well-being. Choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is the ultimate act of self-respect, and the only guarantee that any future connection with her or anyone else will be entered into as a whole. Complete individual, ready not to need, but to truly share.